a blueprint. White paper, pencil marks, red circles drawn by someone who wasn't supposed to touch it. It was sitting on top of a steel drafting table in a 32nd floor office at one of the biggest engineering firms in Houston. The young woman who found it had been awake for 31 hours. Her coffee was untouched. Her eyes were swollen. She had been working on a project worth $180 million, and it was failing. She almost moved it aside, almost swept it off the pile without looking. But then she saw the circle. One red circle, precise, deliberate, drawn around a single load value on page 11. And beside it, in handwriting so careful it looked typeset, 4 words. This number is wrong. Her hands started shaking, because those 4 words meant the entire structural calculation for the Meridian Tower, 16 months of work, 43 engineers, a $180 million contract, had been built on a foundation error that no one had caught. No one except the woman who cleaned their office every night at 11 p.m. The woman they stepped around in the hallways, the woman who emptied their wastebaskets and wiped their whiteboards and was gone before the sun came up. She left 4 words on a blueprint she was never supposed to read. And when they checked the security footage and saw who had drawn that circle, the entire floor went quiet. Because the cleaning woman had a secret. A secret she had been carrying for 9 years. And those 4 words didn't just save the project. They cracked open a life that no one in that building had ever thought to ask about. If you believe that the smartest person in the room isn't always the one whose name is on the door, stay with me. Because what they found out about the woman who wiped their whiteboards, it will change the way you look at every person you have ever walked past without seeing. Her name was Lena Boateng. She was 41 years old. She had been cleaning the offices of Callaway Structural Engineers for 9 years, 32nd floor. One of the most respected firms in the South, the kind of place where the drafting software cost more than her car, where the lead engineers billed more in a day than she earned in a week. She arrived at 10:30 every night. She left at 5 every morning. And in between, she was invisible. Lena knew the building the way you only know a place when you have cleaned it in the dark. She knew which windows leaked when it rained. She knew which drafting table wobbled on its left leg. She knew that the senior engineer in room 3204 always left his coffee mug upside down when he was angry, and right side up when he wasn't. She knew everything about this place, and no one knew anything about her. The engineers walked past her, the way people walk past furniture, not with cruelty, just with the particular blindness of people who have never needed to see someone. She was the woman with the mop. The woman in the gray polo shirt with the company logo of a cleaning service that was not Callaway. She kept their world clean and ordered, and she disappeared before morning, and no one had ever once asked her name. Thomas Callaway, senior partner and founder. He had passed Lena in the hallway every Monday night when he stayed late. Same hallway, same time, for 9 years. He had never once looked at her, not with disrespect, just with nothing. The complete absence of recognition. The kind of invisibility that is worse than contempt, because contempt at least confirms that you exist. Lena never complained. She did her work. She was methodical and quiet. She cleaned in a fixed pattern, the same rooms in the same order, every night. She wiped the whiteboards without smearing the diagrams that hadn't been photographed yet. She emptied the recycling bins without disturbing the draft prints stacked beside them. She left nothing out of place. And every night, after the last engineer went home and the hallways went dark, and the only sound was the hum of the HVAC system, Lena read. Not books, not magazines, blueprints. She read the structural drawings left rolled open on drafting tables. She read the load calculations printed and marked up and left in review piles. She read the engineering reports spread across conference room B like a paper landscape. She didn't take anything. She didn't move anything. She just read. The way a surgeon, who can no longer operate, still watches every procedure with the same precise eye. Lena read engineering drawings because engineering was the only thing she had left of the woman she used to be. Solomon was the only person in the building who spoke to her. Night security, 48 years old, a man who kept a thermos of sweet tea at his desk and did the crossword in pen because, he said, crossing things out was part of the process. "Evening, Professor," Solomon would say every night when Lena signed in. It had started as a joke, 3 weeks into her first month, after he caught her reading a structural report, upside down, and then correctly pointing out that the page had been printed inverted. He'd called her professor since that night, and he'd never stopped. "Evening, Solomon, 32nd floor, behaving itself?" "Room 3204 has a leak behind the east window again. I left a note for facilities. You know you're the only one who actually reads those facility notes." Lena would smile, small and brief, and take the elevator up. And Solomon would watch the numbers rise and think the same thing he had thought for 9 years. Who is this woman? Really? Because cleaning staff don't read blueprints. Cleaning staff don't pause at a drafting table to study a load diagram. And cleaning staff don't replace a whiteboard marker someone left uncapped, aligned precisely with the others, cap facing the same direction, without being asked or even noticed. But Lena did, every night. For 9 years, and no one ever asked why. There was one drafting room Lena always moved through quickly. Room 32111, the Meridian Tower room. The one that never seemed to sleep even when the engineers did, because the drawings were everywhere, on every table, every wall, every inch of floor near the windows. She never lingered there until the night she heard someone crying inside it. Adia's Mensa was 29 years old. She had been at Callaway Structural for 14 months, and she was drowning. She was the youngest project engineer on the Meridian Tower team, the only black woman on the structural division. She had graduated with honors from Georgia Tech, turned down 2 offers from firms in New York and Dubai because Callaway had promised her real projects, real responsibility, a real shot. They gave her Meridian. Meridian Tower was a 44-story mixed-use development going up in downtown Houston. The largest private construction contract in the firm's history. The structural engineering package, the bones of the building, was Callaway's work. And Adiaze had spent 14 months as the junior lead on the load analysis team, running calculations, coordinating with the architect, managing review cycles. She had worked harder on this project than she had worked on anything in her life. The problem was on floor 22. 3 weeks before the steel erection permit was set to be finalized, a contractor on site had flagged an inconsistency. A discrepancy between the steel column sizing on the construction drawings and the numbers in the structural calculation package. The project manager had brought it to the Callaway team. The team had reviewed it. And the review had landed on Daisy's desk because she was junior and because it was the kind of problem that got handed to junior engineers when nobody wanted to own it. She had been reviewing it for 9 days. Every review led to the same place. The moment she followed the load path back far enough, she hit a wall. The tributary area calculation on page 11 of the foundation package. A number that fed into every column on floors 18 through 27. If that number was wrong, and she was becoming more certain by the hour that it was, then the entire foundation specification for the central core was undersized. Not catastrophically, not immediately dangerous, but enough that the building, over 20 years of load cycles, could develop settlement problems significant enough to compromise the structure. The permit submission was in 4 days. If she raised this now, the firm would have to pull the package, rerun everything, notify the developer, and potentially delay the steel erection by 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks on a $180 million contract was the kind of delay that cost the firm cost the client millions in carrying costs, and cost whoever raised it their career. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Thomas Calloway had been in and out of her office all week, not to help, to remind her what was at stake. The permit submission cannot move, Mensa. We've been over this. Are you telling me your review found a problem, or aren't you? I'm telling you I need another 48 hours to be certain. You've had 9 days. The load path is more complex than the original review indicated. If I'm right about the tributary area. If you're right, you're a 14-month engineer on your first major project. I have 23 years in this business, and I'm telling you the foundation package was peer-reviewed by 3 senior engineers. Are you suggesting they all missed something you found? Daisy didn't answer. 48 hours, Calloway said. Then we submit, with or without your sign-off. He left. Daisy sat very still for a long time. Then she turned back to her screen and started running the numbers again. It was 1:15 in the morning when she put her face in her hands and started crying. She wasn't loud about it. She never was. She just sat in room 32111 with her hands over her face and her shoulders shaking, surrounded by 44 stories of drawings that she believed, in her bones, were wrong. And the worst part wasn't the math. The worst part was that she had no idea how to prove it fast enough for anyone to believe her. Lena Boateng stood outside room 3211 with a mop in one hand and a recycling bin in the other. She could hear her through the door. She recognized the sound immediately. Not grief, not fear. Something more specific than either. The sound of someone who is certain about something no one else will let them be certain about. Lena had made that sound once, a long time ago, in a different country, in a different building, standing in front of a different set of drawings. She closed her eyes. She had a choice. The choice she made every night: walk past, stay invisible, keep the quiet life she had rebuilt from the ruin of the one she'd lost, or... She looked at the mop in her hand. 9 years. She had been doing this for 9 years. The woman who had once designed the drainage infrastructure for the second-largest port expansion in West Africa was standing in a Houston hallway at 1 in the morning holding a mop. The woman who had presented at the International Conference on Structural Engineering in Accra at the age of 32. The woman whose firm had employed 60 people before the government contract was pulled. All charges were filed, and the building she had designed was handed to a minister's brother-in-law who had never drawn a structural diagram in his life. Lena had been inside that Meridian file for 3 weeks. She'd read the package the first night it appeared on the drafting table. The way she read everything, quietly, completely, leaving no trace. She'd seen the error on page 11 the second time through. Tributary area calculation, central core, floors 18 through 27. The engineer had used the wrong column spacing in the area formula. The number was small. The kind of small that gets past peer review, because everyone is checking the same master spreadsheet, and nobody checks the spreadsheet against the drawing set. She had known for 3 weeks, and she had said nothing. Because the last time Lena Boateng raised an error on a government infrastructure project, the minister's office filed fraud charges against her firm. They revoked her engineering license. They froze the company accounts. They called her a saboteur, and her husband, Kofi, who had stood beside her through every day of it, who had testified on her behalf, who had refused to sign the settlement document that would have given them their money back if Lena agreed to leave the country quietly. Kofi had his own license suspended, his own career ended. His own name dragged through the Accra papers for 6 months. She had brought Kofi to Houston in the ruin of all of it. He drove a school bus now. She cleaned offices. And they never talked about the drawings anymore. But, standing in this hallway, hearing this young woman cry, the silence felt heavier than the risk. Lena set down the mop. She did not knock. She opened the door slowly and stepped inside. A daze lifted her face. Red eyes, a tissue in one hand, spreadsheet on the screen. She stared at Lena. "I'm sorry," a daze said automatically. "I'll be out of your way in a minute." Lena didn't move toward her mop. She moved toward the drafting table. She looked at the drawing pinned to the board, page 11 of the foundation package. Her eyes went directly to the number. "You know it's wrong," Lena said. A daze went very still. "The tributary area," Lena said. "Column spacing in the formula." He used the grid spacing from the architectural plan, not the structural grid. They're offset by 4 feet in the central core. The room was completely silent. "How do you?" A daze started. "Because I read it." Lena's voice was even. 3 weeks ago. I've read the whole package." A daze stared at her. "You're the cleaning." "Yes." Another silence. "The recalculated value is in the range of 12 to 14% higher than what's on the page," Lena said, "which means the column sizing on floors 18 through 27 is running close to the margin. Not a collapse risk at current design loads, but not acceptable for a 40-year building either." A daisy stood up slowly. She came to the drafting table. She stood beside Lena and looked at the number. "I've been running it for 9 days, a daisy said. "I kept getting the same discrepancy. Calloway told me I was wrong." "You're not wrong." "If I take this to him again without proof he can't argue with, he's going to submit the package anyway and put it on record that I flagged it and was overruled. That protects the firm. It doesn't protect the building. Then you need something he can't argue with." Lena looked around the room. She picked up a red pencil from the cup on the nearest table. She uncapped it. She looked at Adeze once, a look that asked a question without words. Adeze nodded once. Lena drew a circle on page 11. Around the tributary area value. Clean, precise, deliberate. Then she wrote 4 words in the margin, in handwriting so careful it looked printed. "This number is wrong." She set the pencil down. She looked at Adeze, recalculate it with the structural grid dimensions from sheet S1.4. "The correct spacing is in the general notes, 3rd column. Cross-reference it with the column schedule on S3.2. You'll have a documented discrepancy in 2 hours that any senior engineer in this country can verify independently." Adeze was very still. "Who are you?" Lena picked up her mop. "I'm the cleaning staff." She moved toward the door. She paused with her hand on the frame. "The structural grid dimensions are in the general notes, 3rd column. Don't let them tell you the number is right when you already know it isn't." She left. She didn't look back. Solomon looked up when she came through the lobby at 4:50 in the morning. "Early tonight," he said. Lena stopped. She looked at him for a moment. "Solomon, if someone asked you who I was, what would you say?" He considered it. "I'd say you're the smartest person in this building, and nobody here knows it yet." He picked up his crossword. "Good night, Professor." Lena walked out into the Houston morning. Adeze did not sleep. She pulled sheet S1.4. She found the structural grid dimensions in the general notes, 3rd column, exactly where Lena had said they would be. She ran the calculation. Then she ran it again. Then she called the most senior engineer she trusted, not at Callaway, but her thesis advisor at Georgia Tech, a man named Dr. O.C. Quarty, who answered emails at 2 in the morning because he always had. She sent him the 2 documents, the page 11 value, the S1.4 general notes. She typed 1 line. "Am I reading this correctly?" His response came in 11 minutes. "Yes, the discrepancy is real. Do not submit that package." At 7:15 in the morning, Adaeze walked into Thomas Calloway's office. She put two documents on his desk. Page 11 of the foundation package and sheet S14, side by side. The tributary area calculation is wrong, she said. The engineer used the architectural grid, not the structural grid. The column spacing in the central core is offset by 4 feet. I have independent confirmation from a licensed structural PE that the discrepancy is real, and the column sizing on floors 18 through 27 does not meet code for the design life. Calloway looked at the documents. He put on his glasses. He looked from one page to the other. His face did something complicated. How did you find this? Adaeze hesitated 1 second. She held up the page with the red circle. Someone left me a note. Who? I don't know yet. Calloway took the page. He looked at the circle. He looked at the 4 words in the margin. He looked at the handwriting, which was precise in a way that none of his engineers wrote. The kind of precision that comes from years of drafting by hand before the software made it optional. He picked up his phone. Get the full team in the conference room, now, and call legal. Within 2 hours, the Meridian Tower permit submission was placed on hold. An independent review firm was called in. The correction to the tributary area calculation confirmed the discrepancy. The column sizing package for floors 18 through 27 was revised. The steel erection was delayed by 5 weeks. It cost the firm a difficult conversation with the developer. It cost them a renegotiation of the schedule bonus. It did not cost them the contract, because Thomas Calloway, to his credit, made a decision that morning that surprised everyone who knew him. He called the developer before the developer called him. He explained the error. He explained that his team had caught it before the steel went up. He said the words that most senior partners in his position would not say. We were wrong, and we fixed it before it became your problem. The developer was angry. Then the developer was quiet. Then the developer said, "That's the kind of firm I want building my tower." But Thomas Calloway was not thinking about the developer. He was standing in the conference room holding a page with a red circle on it, 4 words in handwriting that did not belong to anyone on his staff. He called building security. He asked for the camera footage from floor 32, the previous night. 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. The security office was in the basement. Small, warm 2 monitors on a folding table. Calloway stood behind the security guard's chair. His senior partner, Diana Chebe, stood beside him. Adaeze stood in the back of the room. They pulled up the footage. Hallway camera, floor 32. The cleaning cart moving through rooms in sequence. The figure in the gray polo, methodical, room to room. Then room 32111. The figure stopped outside the door, stood still for a moment, went inside. The hallway was empty for 22 minutes. Then the figure came back out, mop in hand, and continued down the hall without looking back. Calm. The steadiness of someone who has done something irreversible and decided it was the right thing. Calloway pointed at the screen. Who is that? The security guard pulled up the sign-in log. Lena Boateng. She's with ProClean Services. Has the contract on 32. How long? 9 years. Calloway turned to Diane. She was already on her phone typing. She typed the name, the country, structural engineering. She pressed search. The screen filled. Academic papers, conference proceedings, court records, a Wikipedia entry in English and Twi, photographs of a woman standing in front of a port construction site in a yellow hard hat. A woman presenting at a conference podium. Diane read the first article. She read it again. She turned the phone toward Calloway. He read it. His mouth opened. He said nothing for a long moment. Adaeze leaned forward and read it over his shoulder. Her hand went to her mouth. Because Lena Boateng was not a cleaning woman. She had never been just a cleaning woman. and the story of how one of the most accomplished structural engineers in West Africa had ended up wiping whiteboards on the 32nd floor of their building was a story none of them were prepared to hear. Lena Boateng graduated first in her class from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in 2005. Her professors called her the architect's architect because she could read a structural drawing the way other people read faces. Instantly, completely, and with an understanding that went beyond what was written. By 32, she was the founding partner of Boateng Mensa Engineering, a firm of 60 people that designed infrastructure across 4 West African countries. Her signature project was the Phase 2 expansion of the Tema Port, a $240 million structural engineering contract that came in on time, under budget, and won an award from the African Union Commission for Engineering Excellence. Her husband, Kofi, was a civil engineer. Together, they were the kind of firm that governments called when they needed the job done right, until the government changed its mind about who should do the job. The Kumasi Northern Bypass was a federal road contract. Lena's firm had won the competitive tender. They were 6 months into the structural design phase when the transport minister called her in. He was sitting behind his desk, relaxed, the way men sit when they have already decided the outcome of a conversation. "I'm moving the contract," he said. "We have a signed agreement. Agreements change. Minister, we have a team of 30 engineers on this project. We have a timeline. You'll be compensated for work completed." Lena looked at him. "Who's taking the contract?" He named a firm she had never heard of, owned by the minister's wife's brother. "That firm has never delivered a project above $15 million, Lena said. "This is a $140 million road. People will drive on it. People will, thank you for your time." She left. She consulted her lawyers. She filed a complaint with the procurement authority. 2 weeks later, the procurement authority filed charges against Boateng Mensa Engineering for submission fraud on the original tender. The charges were fabricated so completely that even her own lawyers couldn't find the seam. Her firm's license was suspended. Their accounts were frozen. 3 of her engineers received individual notices threatening their personal licenses if they testified. Kofi's license was suspended 6 days after he gave a statement to the press. They fought for 14 months. They lost everything except each other. Lena arrived in Houston on a Tuesday in March with 2 suitcases and Kofi's hand in hers. Her engineering credentials were not recognized in Texas without passing the state PE exam, a process that cost money and time she didn't have. Kofi found work first, school bus driver, mornings and afternoons. Lena found the cleaning contract through a church member who worked at ProClean. She told no one what she had been. She took the gray polo. She took the cart. She took floor 32. And every night, when the engineers went home and the building went quiet, she read the drawings. Because the drawings were the only thing left of the woman Kofi, still called brilliant even when she couldn't believe it herself. 9 years, invisible, silent. One of the most accomplished structural engineers in West Africa, wiping whiteboards on the 32nd floor. Diana Chaby closed her phone. She looked at Calloway. Her voice was quiet. "We need to talk to her. Not as a contractor, as a colleague." Calloway was still looking at the security monitor, at the image of Lena in the hallway, mop in hand, walking away from a room where she had just done in 22 minutes what his team couldn't do in 9 days. He said nothing for a long moment. Then, "Find out where she is." They reached Lena at 7:45 in the morning. She was at home. Kofi answered the phone. When he handed it to her, and she heard Calloway's voice asking if she could come in, she was quiet for a moment. "Why?" she said. "Because we looked at the footage, and then we looked you up." Another silence. "We'd like to speak with you," he said. If you're willing. She looked at Kofi across the kitchen table. He raised his eyebrows. She said, I'll come in. At 10 that morning, Lena Boating walked into the Callaway conference room in slacks and a blouse, not the gray polo. She sat down across from Thomas Callaway, Diane Achebe, 4 senior engineers, and Adeze Mensah, who was sitting at the far end of the table and had not stopped thinking about the woman for 5 hours. The room was quiet. Callaway folded his hands. Messieurs Boateng, you've been cleaning our offices for 9 years. Yes, and in that time, you've been reading our project files. Yes, and you saw the Meridian error 3 weeks ago. Yes. A senior engineer named Paul shifted in his seat. Why didn't you say something sooner? Lena looked at him. She looked at all of them. Because the last time I said something about an error on a government infrastructure project, my firm was destroyed. She said it without anger. Just as a fact, the kind of fact you state when you've had long enough to make peace with it. I wasn't sure this building deserved the risk. The room was very quiet. What changed? Adeze said from the end of the table. Lena looked at her. You did. You already knew the number was wrong. You just needed someone to confirm you weren't losing your mind. Paul looked down at the table. Another engineer removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Callaway stood up. He walked around the table. He stopped in front of Lena, and he extended his hand. Messieurs Boateng, I owe you an apology. For 9 years of walking past you in this hallway like you weren't there. Lena looked at his hand. She looked at the table of engineers. She looked at the Houston skyline through the glass. Then she shook it. You don't owe me an apology, Mr. Callaway. You owe me an accurate set of drawings. Someone at the table laughed. The tension shifted. I'd like to offer you a role here, Callaway said. A real one. I'm not looking for charity. This isn't charity. This is a firm that just figured out it's had one of the most qualified structural engineers in the room for 9 years and never looked up from its own paperwork. We need to fix that. Lena was quiet. You'll need to sit the Texas PE exam. We'll support that. In the meantime, we'd like you on the Meridian Correction Team. Formally. With your name on the documentation. Kofi was in the parking lot when she came out at noon. He had driven her in because they shared the car on her days off. He was reading a book in the front seat. He looked up when she opened the door. He read her face. His own face changed. Lena, they offered me a position. He was quiet for a moment, then his eyes filled and he looked away, out the windshield, at the Houston street, at the ordinary Tuesday morning going on outside. Kofi, she said. He shook his head. He couldn't speak for a moment. Then he said quietly, I told you the whole time. Didn't I tell you? She reached over and took his hand. They sat there in the parking lot for a while, not saying anything else. The Houston traffic moved past. The sun was doing what it does in Houston in the daytime, which is burn without asking permission. The Meridian Tower structural package was corrected and resubmitted. The independent review confirmed the column sizing revision. The steel erection permit was issued 5 weeks after the original date. The building went up. Lena was not in the conference room when the permit came through. She was in a small office on the 31st floor, not the 32nd, because she said she wanted to look at the building from a different angle, and because she'd spent long enough on 32. She was reviewing the floor loading specifications for the mechanical penthouse on Meridian. The correction that had followed from her finding, and she was doing it with the focused, unhurried attention of someone who is finally doing the work they were made to do. Adeze knocked on the open door and came in. She was carrying 2 things, a coffee and a framed copy of page 11 of the foundation package, the original, the one with the red circle and the 4 words. I had it scanned before legal archived it, she said. She set it on the desk. The red circle was vivid against the white paper. "This number is wrong." "You framed it," Lena said. "It stopped a building from being built wrong. It deserved a frame." She set the coffee beside it. "I also brought this because I realized that in 9 years of working in the same building, nobody ever brought you coffee. You were always the one cleaning up the cups." Lena looked at the framed page, at the 4 words in her own handwriting, at the coffee. "Thank you, Adeze. Thank you for not walking past." She left. Lena sat in her quiet office on the 31st floor, the Houston skyline in the window, a framed blueprint on her desk, a cup of coffee going warm because she was too busy looking at the drawings to drink it. Some people carry their whole life's work in silence. Not because they have given up on it, but because the last time they brought it into the light, the world used it against them. Lena Boateng had walked those hallways for 9 years. She had wiped their boards and emptied their bins and read their drawings in the dark. She hadn't left that note for recognition. She hadn't done it for a job. She had done it because a young woman was sitting alone in a room at 1 in the morning, certain about something true and unable to make anyone believe her. And Lena knew what it costs to be certain about something true when the room disagrees with you. 4 words, a red pencil circle, and a woman in a gray polo shirt who could see what a team of 43 engineers had been walking past for 14 months. The people you pass in the hallways, the ones who clean the rooms after you leave, who fix the things before you arrive, who know your building better than you ever will. They have entire lives you haven't thought to ask about. They carry the weight of things the world tried to take from them. Some of them are carrying it quietly into your building every night, doing work that is worth 10 times what they're being paid for, waiting for the moment when the silence costs more than the risk. Don't walk past people. You never know who you're walking past. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because every story on this channel carries something worth holding on to. And the next one might be the one that changes how you see the person standing right beside you.